morning started, a beautiful morning similar to today. Beautiful sunny morning. I was home playing Mr. Mom. I had my two beautiful daughters. Catherine was 18 months and Elizabeth was 9 months. And I was a firefighter at the time. So I have, days off in the middle of the week. My wife was working for New York Magazine up in Midtown. And so I was home. I had the girls and it was a great, beautiful morning. We just finished breakfast and I got a call from my next door neighbor, who was like my surrogate mom. My mom had passed away a few years before and she was taking care of us and took care of my little girls at the time. And so she called, she said, a plane just had hit the World Trade Center. And how is your sister? How's Nancy? Because Nancy worked in the World Trade Center for the Port Authority. So I'm like, oh my heavens. Okay, great. Thanks very much. I'm going to find out. I start my checking into things and calling people. Immediately phones are down. There's no cell service because who had cell phones? Only a few people. So I immediately turn on television, look, and I'm like, oh boy, this is a really big plane. This isn't just a Cessna, slipped into the building. This was a big plane. So I take a VHS tape, put it in the machine. Some people don't even know what that is, but a VHS tape, put it in the machine, hit record, and started recording it just because I knew it was so much going on. And that was the first tower, probably 8:45, basically. By 9 o'clock, when the second tower was hit, I realized that this was a real big event. This was tragic, and I had to go to work. And I knew they had called a recall for the firemen. That was a little bit later, but they were going to. Everyone had to go. So I look across to my neighbor, and she's pulling out of the driveway. She's going to watch my children that day when I go to work at night. And she's leaving. And I don't know where she's going. Can't get to her, no cell phones. So I don't have any place to put these two little girls. So I hear my brother's voice, who was a Marine, and told me, your duty is to your family now. He was older than me and said, your duty is to family. Your first priority is take care of those children. So now I'm jumping through my skin trying to get out and get somewhere. My two sisters lived in New Jersey, so they weren't able to come over and help. And it was probably, I watched the whole thing unfold on television, basically. And I knew when this first, the first thing I thought was, we're never going to be able to put these fires out. Never thought that those buildings would ever collapse. And I thought, this is impossible. I have to go and I can't get there. So probably just before 10 o'clock, Nancy had finally called me. She finally got out of the building and she called me from a little store down near Nassau Street. And she said, Gerard, what do I do? Where do I go? I said, well, Eileen, my wife, is up in Midtown. Go to the FDNY Drive, get away from the buildings and walk north. Just go. The buildings hadn't collapsed at this point. So she does what I tell her. She starts heading up north and she's just outside the dust cloud. If you remember that morning, the dust cloud went south and kind of to the west side. So the east side was pretty well protected. So I don't know. I know she's safe, but I don't know where she is. Little did I know that at that point I was trying to get in touch with my brother. I couldn't get a hold of him. Wasn't at home. He had a cell phone because he had a business. So no cell phone answering. I called the firehouse. They said, yeah, he was working. They went early and they're probably there. So now I'm getting a little nervous because now I know things are getting bad, but he's there. He was skilled. He was a Marine. So he was trained. He was assigned to Engine 219, but he was with Ladder 105, their sister company from downtown Brooklyn. And I'm sure he knew that, he was going there because Nancy was in the building. His fiance was a few blocks away. So he wanted to get to downtown Manhattan, I'm sure, for no other reason except for his training, as well as being a firefighter, prior police officer. He was there. And like I said, he was the one who told me, well, take care of your children. As soon as your children are covered, you're free to go. Buildings collapsed. I knew it was a tremendous loss of life, as well as firefighters, not even thinking that John was lost, just thinking that he was there, like all the other firefighters. Finally, a few hours later, buildings are down. There's nothing I can do anymore at this point, but now I start realizing I still have my job to do. My neighbor comes home. I pass the children off, run into Brooklyn where my firehouse was. collecting my gear. I sign in our daily log and I'm ready to go. I am, heading downtown. People are calling now, the firehouse, everyone's got to get there. And my chief walks in, and with that, a fire truck from New Jersey pulls up. And the chief comes in and says, listen, you're responsible for this fire truck. You're going to be a lieutenant soon. You have to stay with this fire truck for the day and run all the runs in Borough Park. I said, I can't. I have to go. My brother could be down there. I got to go get him. And he tells me, we get it. There's thousands of guys down there looking for everybody and searching and doing their job. You have to be the guy here. There's nobody left. We have companies from New Jersey all over the borough, all over Manhattan, helping, and you have to help. So I spent the better part of 8 or 10 hours responding in Borough Park, probably more. That was a whole day with this company from New Jersey. And funny how you don't remember certain things. I can't remember what company it was. I do have vague memory that it was Elizabeth, New Jersey. And then it was probably around midnight that my company had come back. They had responded actually to the World Trade Center as well from Borough Park. And my senior man came in, and I was in the house watch waiting for a run. Phones were down. They were getting us via this thing they call the voice alarm system. They just call and say, hey, you got to run, go to 42nd Street, 12th Avenue, and there's a house on fire. So I'm sitting there, and he comes in, and he knew my situation at that point. Everybody knew my brother was a firefighter and working. And he said, listen, 105, we found their truck, but we haven't found a person yet. So he said, there's a good chance that they're all gone. He goes, right now the list of the missing is 1,000. He goes, we don't know what the number is, but we don't think they made it. And it was very emotional. And he said, you know what you need to do? You need to go home. And I'm like, no, I have a job to do. I got to stay here. I have to go. He goes, listen, you told me that your brother's fiance got to Midtown to my wife's office. It took them until almost midnight to get home. So they had gotten in just ahead of me. My sister Nancy was there. My brother's fiance got there and got home. So they were all in my house. He said, your whole family's in your house. There's enough firemen doing their job here. You need to go to them. And I remember driving over and it's funny, the dust was already in Brooklyn by that point. So the cars had this crazy dust on them. And I'm looking at the dust thinking, that's from lower Manhattan. And I'm in the middle of Borough Park, almost in the middle of the borough of Brooklyn. And it's here. And I said, I can't go there right now. If I go there, I'm never going to leave that site. I'm going to be there forever because I knew that we had lost so many guys and personal friends of mine, as well as my brother. And I said, you know what? I got to go home. I have to go home because everybody was at the house thinking of what to do. Well, I was the firefighter now, and I was the big brother, was the little brother, but now gravitated to a new role. Let me go home. And I went home, and it was a chaotic few days of grief and disbelief and everybody just trying to make sense of the whole thing. It was really, really traumatic. And the fact that Nancy was okay, if we had lost both of them, it would have been exponentially worse. So Nancy has her own issues with some survivor guilt, but we can't change that part of history. You can look back, but you can't go back. So it took me a couple of days, and then fortunately I have a lot of good friends at the fire department. Someone said, listen, we're taking you in to the World Trade Center. We're going to go to the truck. We're going to go to 105's rig, and you're going to get a look-see. And from that day, when I got there, I sat on the truck and I still was in disbelief. And if you could orientate yourself a little bit to where the fire truck was in relation to the site, it was pretty much on West Street, directly in front of the Marriott. So, as we think about that day and John's events that day, we think they went into the Marriott and then found their way into the South Tower. And so I went and I took some time, and I really took a moment to really kind of feel the gravity of the loss standing there. And it was truly traumatic. But I took a deep breath and I said, you know what? This is my job. We're here to help people. That's what firefighters do. And that's what my brother was doing. And I know his history told him he had to be there because he was in the Beirut barracks bombing in 1983 and survive that, only to come here and go to work that morning and then go to the World Trade Center site to die. So truly, truly, he knew his place was there. He knew he had to be there. And he had said to me when he got back from the military that I was going to join. And he's like, "You're not joining." He goes, "If there was ever a conflict, I would go again, and not you. You're the smart one. You need to be the one who takes care of things." So, pardon me. So he was destined to be there. It sounds crazy, but I think he was destined to be there. And the years between Beirut and 9/11 kind of cultivated his life to be there. He showed people how to love, how to be compassionate, how to be understanding, and to really, really appreciate what we have every day. Every day, really understand that this is a very precious place we live in. Even though we're surrounded with grief and pain and suffering, the people in our lives, in the world we live in, are truly, truly important. Every moment is important. So fast forward, we spent months and months searching for anybody and everybody. And it was, I spent a lot of time there. So much time that I actually, we hired a live-in to take care of the children, so that in the middle of the night, if I felt like I had to go, I would just get in my car and go. Because it was, I think his words in my head were, take care of business. You have to do this. And I knew that he was telling me that because it was only a small window of recovery that we were going to have. And then once they shut it, there's no more recovery. So living with the regret of not going would have been worse than going in the middle of the night to do my job. So I knew that he was playing at me there too. He was working his magic, from the other side of the grave, if you want to say. And fortunately, we were the only person recovered from ladder 105. And the recovery came from two bone fragments we had recovered at the landfill. But it happened just around Easter in 2002. And just a couple of days before, I was working through the night at the site, and we had recovered a firefighter. And it was probably my most proud moment was when we were able to take that firefighter, put him in the Stokes basket, and carry him up the ramp. And I thought, wow, could it have been John? Was it possible? And obviously it was not possible, because the firefighter we had taken out was a different timing. John's recovery came from the ME's office from the landfill. But it was one of those things, aha moment that was unbelievable. I finally made the goal I was there for. And I had recovered many people and things along those lines through the course of my time there. But it was so fulfilling to know that I had done something so good. And we made a recovery. The other 7 on the fire truck that day, nobody was ever recovered. So it was kind of interesting how that played out, that we got it and nobody else. And I say that because my brother's fiance was struggling so much with the fact that he could be gone. They were 6 weeks from being married. So it was a traumatic loss for her. And that recovery, I think, kind of cinched it with her, saying that he was finally gone. And it was so pivotal because one of his big attributes was he had very large calves from being in the Marine Corps. And he was in Okinawa, Japan for a while. And a radio operator, they had to climb to the top of the mountain every day. So he developed these huge calves and legs. And that was one of the bones we had found. So kind of told us, and it gave us a little bit of closure to that part of our life, that we did get a recovery and we were able to bury something. Not everybody was able to do that or have that benefit, So it was pretty traumatic, and it was a pretty interesting story as far as that goes, because Nancy being in the building, John going to the building, his fiance being next to the building, and me not being able to go to the buildings was the most amazing thing, because I know that if my neighbor was present, those girls would have been passed off to her. I would have been in Brooklyn, and before that fire truck pulled up, hours before, I would have been headed to Lower Manhattan, and who knows if I would have been there for the collapses, And I know a lot of people, personal friends of mine who were there, who survived, thank God. It was devastating. It was devastating for them because they had known right away that this was a horrible, horrible moment for the fire department. So it's hard for me to grasp the whole day, putting it in a compact little spot, because there was so many, like I said at the beginning, so many tentacles that ran through the day. And when the dust finally settled in my world, it was dozens of firefighters that I had known, and probably 50 or more acquaintances that were just gone. And it was a tough struggle post 9/11 to get to a good place, to get to a place where I could understand that I was meant to be here and do whatever work I needed to do for John's memory, as well as the lives that are around us and the people we live with every day and we care for so much. That it took me a long time to realize that I was supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be this guy right now having this conversation with you, Shelley. So I think that wraps up my day. It's kind of a roller coaster of events, but if you could follow the track, that's what it was, kind of a long struggle, but I knew I was focused. I knew I had a goal all that entire day. I knew that I was going to have a direction. I just didn't know where I was going. And every time I was going in one direction, I got diverted. And it was for another reason. And I got diverted again. It was another reason. And so the last thing I remember is that night, it was probably 1 or 2 in the morning, maybe even later, when I was finally leaving the firehouse, coming over the Verrazano Bridge back to the little island of Staten, I call it. And I always remembered looking over my shoulder at the trade centers. I just thought they were just 2 beautiful buildings. They were just amazing, architectural. Some people didn't like them. I loved them. I thought it was part of the city world, the skyline we needed to see. And they weren't there. They were there when I was going to work. No, I'm sorry. They were gone when I was going in. And it didn't really dawn on me. I'm like, because this cloud was still puffing smoke, and it could have been just a foggy day and you missed it. By that time of the night, it was dark and you could usually see the towers glowing, and they were gone. And it was really, really painful to look over my shoulder and see, oh, they really are gone. And maybe he really is gone, because we didn't realize that we were hoping that he would survive. And when he survived Beirut, 3 days, we did not know he was alive, because there was no phone communications then. In 1983, there was nothing. So we thought the same thing. He found a way to survive Beirut. Maybe he found a way to survive this. So that was the hope that kept us going for a little while, until we realized that there was no hope. Unfortunately, a lot of guys have passed.
Do you ever feel him with you?
Oh yeah, all the time. Even this morning, getting ready to do this, I could hear his voice saying, "You got this." You've told the story 100 times. And I love the fact that you tell the story, because it keeps my memory alive. That's what I think he thinks.
You were down there searching for your brother and helping out with the recovery, first the rescue, then the recovery. How was your health, Chip?
Actually, I have numerous screenings and testing. I have a little bit of pulmonary function loss. I did a whole workup on my heart. Thank God that's good. And all my cardiac parts are working. But I have the classic GERD and Barrett's esophagus and all the things from inhaling whatever we inhaled. I have sinusitis. So a lot of these things are just, the product of what I probably ingested or inhaled while I was down there. And I do remember, again, it's John's voice talking to me. If they said wear a respirator, you wore the respirator. If you're supposed to put it on, put it on. And unfortunately, sometimes when we were digging by smell. So we'd have to take them off. So we took them off, and we got in trouble numerous times for it. But I do remember, like, John was a good soldier and taught me how to be a good soldier. So he'd say, if you had to wear the respirator, put it on. If you're not doing anything and you could wear it, wear it. So I think that's God willing that, and his graces. I'm not seriously ill in any way, shape, or form. So I thank him and I thank God for that. There's no cancers or things along the lines that are truly critical to my health right now. These are just minor inconveniences to keep me alive and keep me going. So I'm blessed that I don't have those problems. And I've lost dozens of friends and people I know from World Trade Center illnesses. And it's a horrible death. You know, we talk about the 343 we lost that day. But right now we're well into the 240s of people who've died from World Trade Center illnesses, just firefighters. And we're going to eclipse that 343 number one day because the pool is still there. And there's a lot of us in the pool. And it's sad because in 11 seconds, we lost 343 firefighters, 11 seconds. And now we're 20 years later and we're in the 240s. And we're going to go past that number. And those guys actually struggled every single day of their illnesses with these horrible, horrible cancers and lung disabilities and all these things. I actually honestly think that those guys sometimes are true heroes to the fact that they did their job. They did what I did and did the recovery and, you know, and got sick. And now they're dying. And it's truly, again, another emotional thing because we, you know, last month, I think we had 4 World Trade Center deaths in the New York City Fire Department. That's staggering, you know, and that's in 1 month. That's one a week. That's one person a week we're losing to this horrible, the illnesses from World Trade Center. So it definitely, I'm blessed to know that I am healthy at this point in my life and that I can help with those funerals and do things with, you know, the ceremony unit and the family assistance unit to help these families deal with the loss and deal with the sickness. You know, when I was working with the ceremony unit, we dealt mostly with the funeral preparations things, but now I work with the family assistance unit, which is dealing with the people who are sick and getting them transportation to their, you know, to Sloan and all the hospitals that are treating them for cancer or any of their illnesses. So it's a different type of involvement in the fire department, but it's very fulfilling and rewarding. Not that there's not an emotional toll that goes with it as well, but I know that I was meant to be here and do this job.
Take me through your career post 9/11 and then please explain, because most people have not heard of the Family Assistance Unit. It's really quite an organization within an organization that really takes care of its own and the entire FDNY community.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. My post 9/11 career, the day the site closed, it was the end of May in 2002. And the next day I was promoted to lieutenant. So it's kind of an interesting thing and a good piece of emotional closure for me because it was like closing that chapter of my life and opening the new one. So it was a good, fresh start, let's say. And I was a lieutenant in 247 Engine in Borough Park, on the other side of Borough Park, for almost 12 years. And then I got promoted to captain, and then I became a captain, and I was transferred out to Staten Island and Huguenot, a little place they call Oz. And it is a beautiful place. It's a wonderful, and it's a firehouse filled with senior firefighters. So it's not all brand new guys. Everyone is seasoned, a veteran who knows their job. And a lot of them were around during 9/11. So it was very comforting for me to be there. Presently I have a hip injury. So from an accident. So I'm convalescing a little bit, but that's how I ended up switching gears from the ceremony unit to the family assistance unit, because they had needed somebody in that unit to help with these World Trade Center families. And as we're leading into the 20th anniversary, there's a lot of work to be done. Families are very interested in breaking out of the pandemic and getting to a memorial to memorialize their loved ones. And so the family assistance unit, it's kind of like you said, a unit within a unit, but it's a family inside our own family. And I've said this to multiple people, the FDNY, the F is for family. Family comes first. And we should always think that way. And again, my brother's influence is the one who taught me that, like, your family comes first, take care of those little girls, right? I can still hear his voice. So the family assistance unit pretty much handles anybody who's sick or ill, moving them around. We run over 300 transportation calls a month for guys who are sick or injured. or going in for surgeries or things like that. So we take care of a lot of people on a daily basis and on a monthly basis. And then add on top of that, when a family has a plaque dedication in a firehouse, or they need to be transported to a firehouse or an event, we transport the families to the memorial day. As a matter of fact, this week we're doing finally opened up from the Slutman plaque dedication. Shannon Slutman is coming in, and we're going to get her. She lives in Delaware now, so we're sending a team down there to pick her up, bring her into Manhattan for her plaque dedication at the end of the week. So it really is a complex group of people, and the team is wonderful. Dominique and Evelyn, they're two wonderfully kind-hearted people. They're wonderful, and they do a great job. You know, our whole staff. Lally is one of our administrative assistants. Mary is one of our ladies who work with us. Tremendously organized people who put their heart and soul into the unit. You know, and the officers who work alongside of me. We all have the same kind of event in our head. We all think the most important thing is that family. And even from my ceremonial experience with Joe LaPointe as the commanding officer, you know, we kind of, you know, we take the worst day of someone's life, whether it's a funeral or it's a plaque dedication, and just try to make it just that much better. Just change, give them one thing to remember that said, that was beautiful. That was a tremendous honor for me to be here watching all these firefighters come and EMTs and come together to honor my loved one. Can't be more successful and more rewarding than anything I've ever done than that. That's the pinnacle of a good day for us, even though it could be somebody's worst day. And sadly enough, the reason I think I'm passionate about it so much is because I was the guy on the other side of that blue line. So when we had the service for my brother, it was in November, we had a memorial, and it was hundreds of guys showed up, turned out for that, for me to support me and my family, but to remember John. And we hadn't had a recovery, so we just had a memorial mass. And later on, when I joined the ceremony unit, I'm like, now this is the reason I had to be there, because I know what it was like to be the person opposite the uniforms. As well as before that, I used to be the guy in the line, you know, and it's very difficult for me to not connect to those families, every single one of them in a certain way, because I know what they're going through. I know their loss personally, you know, so it's very fulfilling and very rewarding for me to do this job.
You speak of family first, learned from John. Tell me what your children are doing today and how old are they?
Well, Catherine is now 21, and she is a biomedical engineering student at SUNY Binghamton. And she is looking towards her future, working in research, you know, along those lines, maybe even something along the lines of, you know, working with like the coronavirus type of thing. My daughter, Elizabeth, who is now 20, she is in TCNJ, the College of New Jersey, and she's a sophomore for elementary or early education. So she wants to be a teacher, which would be wonderful. And she's such a compassionate person. So it kind of works, you know, and she loves children. So it's going to be good for her. And since, and my son is 18, Matthew, and it's very interesting. When I put my arm around Matthew, he's very tall, and he's a few inches taller than me. So I put my arm around his shoulder, and his name is Matthew John. And he has a lot of my brother's traits, but he doesn't know the world before 9/11. When I tell people, it's Matthew's whole life. It's his whole lifetime. He does not know the world, you know, before 9/11. So he is going off to college with the coronavirus thing. He's going off to college in SUNY Alfred for machine operator, working with his hands, similar to what John and I both did our whole lives, you know. Not so much the book smart guys, but the guys who actually go out there and make a difference, change in lives, you know, with the hands-on operation of things. So very proud of all of them for, you know, being so successful so far in their lives, and to understand that, you know, we're here to serve other people. You know, on a quick note, we've done multiple blood drives in John's memory, probably thousands of blood units put into the system to help people. because one of the reasons we got into it was when we were searching for anybody or anything, the New York City Blood Center actually had vials of blood stored from firefighters who were in the bone marrow program, and they saved them for some reason. And a lot of families, the only closure they had was to bury those vials of blood. So it was very important to us to run these blood drives. And this year, in the middle of the pandemic, we ran it, and we had about 90 units of blood put into the system. That could save over 250 lives in John's memory. And it's just the most amazing thing. And my children were there every step of the way. And in so much as they even ran their own blood drives, when they were in high school, to get their friends involved. And sometimes they came and sometimes they didn't, but it's just that feeling of service that they get from us, and they got it from their uncle. It's an amazing carry through in our family, in the direction we're going.
Is there anything else you want to add, Chip?
Just that this is great. I feel bad that I was emotional, but Shelley, this was phenomenal. And for you to take these stories to people, as long as somebody remembers their name or says their name, people will never truly die. That's truly how I feel in my heart, that if you say John Chipura enough and you remember him enough, then he's still alive for somebody. So I think it's critical that we go forward with this 20th anniversary. And now that we're opening up, that it should be a more public event. It should be out there for families who are craving, they're looking for something to do to remember their loved one on the 20th anniversary. This might be the last big anniversary we have, and I'll tell you another quick story about being at the site. And it's one of my mantras that, everyone says never forget. And I'm very glad you're doing this. And I thought about this the other day when I was coming on. And never forget gives the connotation that you could possibly forget, right? You're never going to do it, but you could accidentally forget. So one night at the site, I see this huge banner unroll on the side of the building, and it says never forget. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. But shouldn't it be always remember? It should be always remember, because it's got a little positive spin to it. And I know I will always remember my brother's memory and his life. So anytime we do something with John's, memory, it's a little always remember on it. Even in the notes I take, it says always remember. On 9/11, I put always remember. In my day book, when I was in the firehouse, always remember, because you can't forget if you're always remembering. So it definitely takes a spin. And again, it's his voice telling me you have to make this positive. All of this thing that we did was not for nothing. It was for a positive, life role and a forward direction. So let's keep moving forward. Let's always remember. Let's take care of the people who are sick and make sure they get the best care they can, through this whole thing. So that's the best I could do at this point. But that's where I'd like to end it with. Just always remember. It's important to remember, and it's important to take care of your family and your people around you, and take care of all those people who are taking care of us.
Thank you so much, Captain Chip. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you to your brother.